Hi there. I'm making this video as a kind of reaction to several people who've questioned me as to why I'm so against the EDL. Okay, to give you a bit of background on the EDL, it stands for the English Defence League. Now, they are a group of far right-wing extremists who are incredibly Islamophobic and who quite often call for the deportation of all Muslim people. Okay, to give you sort of an example of how extremist the EDL is, I'm going to give you a couple of quotes taken from EDL members through their Facebook pages in relation to a story of British human rights abuses during the colonial eras of Kenya specifically. They have said several comments such as, "Fuck 'em, fuck them black savages, oh my god, they can fuck off as well, go fuck off, no, fuck off, sure as Kenya apologises for Barack Obama," nice one there, "now the bastards will want money, let them eat cake, fuck Kenya to be honest." And that's just from one screenshot I took. To give you an even greater idea of how extremist they are, in the town of Braintree in England, near London actually, there was a petrol bombing on a mosque down there, and when the New Daily Patriot broke this story, they in the comment section there were comments. Two comments stood out to me. They were, "Let's all hope thousands more copy him all over Britain," and that got 26 likes. And the next one was, "Give him a medal, I say. If there were more like him, this country wouldn't be in the state it is." That one had 42 likes. At the moment, I feel very fortunate that there isn't a mainstream party as such which actively encourages this kind of campaign of hate. You do see certain parties like the UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, and the British National Party. They both have very right-wing views, they're both very Europhobic, and they're both very Islamophobic, but neither of them hold enough power to make much of a difference, apart from UKIP in the very south of England, where they're bigger than the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats at the moment. However, the EDL quite actively supports UKIP in its stances against Europe and immigration. I find this incredibly ironic because immigration throughout history has always helped countries develop themselves. If you actually treat immigration correctly, if you give immigrants the correct support to build lives in this country, and countries all over the world, you can build some of the greatest countries in the world. The United States is the biggest example of that, and currently the Republicans and an unfortunate amount of the Democrats over there have very, very anti-immigration views, which I find very ironic considering where they've came from. To get back to the EDL, many members of the EDL actively call for blacks and Indians and people of colour to be deported back to their homeland. You know, their homelands like Britain, for example. Many people targeted by the EDL are of British descent. The two killers of Lee Rigby last week were British. They were originally Christians who'd been radicalised by Islam, unfortunately. Fundamentalist Islam, I should say. One of the things I found particularly disturbing about this case was Theresa May, who is the Secretary of State in the UK. Her job is to run the internal affairs of England and Wales, so like the healthcare system, social services, stuff like that. She came out and said that thousands of Muslims are at risk of radicalisation. That may or may not be true. It's probably leaning on the side that it might be true, but she completely failed to recognise the risk of radicalisation of non-Muslims, members like the EDL, who actively have been participants of murders against Muslim people in the past. 4 weeks ago, a Muslim man, elderly Muslim man in Birmingham was hacked to death with machetes. by EDL supporters. This wasn't recorded by the news at all. In fact, I only found out about it after the death of Lee Rigby. A typical aspect of Islamophobia has been the underrepresentation of anti-Islamic attacks within the news. Whenever you open a newspaper or turn on the news, usually there's a couple of stories about how another terrorist plot has been foiled, and this terrorist plot was from Yemen, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and has been conducted by Muslims. Very rarely what you'll actually hear is a Muslim person being murdered for being Muslim. The helpline Faith Matters, which is a Muslim-run helpline for the victims of anti-Islamic attacks and abuse, in 3 days after the attack on Lee Rigby, they received 162 separate calls relating to incidents committed against Muslims. These attacks ranged from petrol bombings of mosques, knife attacks against Muslims, Muslim women having their headscarves ripped off them, and from general name-calling to physical assaults. Muslims themselves have came out to condemn what happened to Lee Rigby. The Muslim community has been trying its hardest to prove that this wasn't an act committed by rational people, that this was acts committed by very disturbed people, and I've got to give credit to the BBC. They have been trying something of an effort to represent Muslim people by showing several interviews with Muslim faith leaders condemning what happened, but this hasn't been enough for the EDL. They have been getting stronger than ever. Their protests have been getting bigger, with protests estimated to be in the thousands happening across the country. Next Saturday I'll be attending a counter-protest against the SDL outside the Scottish Parliament. The SDL being the Scottish Defence League, same as the EDL, but yeah, Scottish. One final message to leave you with. The EDL have very strong similarities with Nazi Germany. I know you should never really use the Nazi argument because 9 times out of 10 it's irrefutable. It's technically a form of cheating within debating circles. You're not allowed to use the Nazi argument in professional debating. The reason I'm using it now is because I'm very, very scared of where fascists are trying to lead Britain. Political parties like UKIP and wannabe political activist parties like the EDL, they're trying to steer Britain down a very, very dangerous path based on fear and hatred of non-white Christian people. Non-white, non-Christian. They preach that black people and Indian people and Muslim people should go back to their own country. And you hear even more extremist views within them saying that they should just be killed, that their lives don't matter, in the exact same way that Nazi Germany treated Jewish people during the 30s and the 40s. Over my dead body, will I allow that to happen? I know I have no real power. All I can do is give my opinions and give my views, and hopefully people with power will listen. I know the likelihood of that happening is non-existent, but I have to try, because it's my duty as a student of history and politics and sociology to not let that happen again. I don't want to see another Holocaust. I don't want to see another war. You may think I'm being extreme, but in the 1920s people were saying the exact same thing. That Nazi Germany was going too far, that the nationalists were getting too strong, the National Socialists, as the Nazi Party were back then. Hitler's very first powerful speech was against Jews, and he shot up in power so fast that within 2 decades he'd started World War II and led to the deaths of, well, we don't even know how many people died in World War II. Roughly over 75 million. Most likely far, far higher. I don't even want to risk that happening again. So, that's why I'm making this video. Thanks. Right, so, I just finished recording everything I had to say in this video, and I refreshed the BBC News webpage, and it turns out that Help for Heroes, a charity dedicated to helping wounded servicemen and women coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq and wherever else they operate in the world, are not accepting any donations from the EDL because they say the EDL is a political organisation, and as such they do not receive money from political organisations. So yeah, some good news today at least.